Chapel, Nashville, Tennessee. How are you? I am so excited to be here today sharing some healthy holiday meal tips. My name is Pean. I am the CEO and creative director of AFCAVE. And AFCAVE is an acronym for Afro-Carib Vegan. I am a plant-based chef and I celebrate Africa and the African diaspora in my cooking. I am of the opinion that Africa has given a tremendous amount to the culinary legacy of world cuisine, and I just want to celebrate my roots and I want to encourage other people to celebrate their roots. I happen to have African roots. Someone else may have Filipino or Asian roots or something like that. It is all about discovering your roots and celebrating them through your cooking. So today, the first thing I'm going to share with you is my take on greens. Now, greens are clearly an African American tradition. It is something that it's not only reserved for holidays, obviously, it's something that's eaten year round, but I noticed that when it was made, it was often cooked until basically the greens were like paper. And the way I grew up eating greens was much different. My father, I remember fondly on Sundays, my father would be sitting in the family room watching 60 Minutes and he would be picking his greens. And so when he prepared them, he didn't just do salt beef or turkey neck or anything like that, because he's been vegetarian since I can remember. But my father would put onions and tomatoes and bell peppers and celery and mushrooms and all these delicious things in greens. And so that's how I remember eating it. I decided to take it up a notch and take us a little even further back to the continent by adding palm oil. I'm going to saute with some palm oil. I use not only fresh ginger, but I use fresh garlic, and in honor of my stepmother, who is from Kenya, I use a little bit of coconut milk to round it all out. The Luo of Kenya use coconut milk when they fix their greens. Now let me give you another tidbit about greens on the continent. Kontumre in Ghana, Palava in Liberia, greens are a major part of the diet. And one of the things that I found as I was researching plant-based foods of the African diaspora is overwhelmingly our diet on the continent actually is primarily plant-based. Meat and things like that are a sign of respect, a sign of prosperity. But by and large, if there is any flesh that's consumed, it's typically something like fish. Now my father, who is from Liberia, West Africa, he is an indigenous Kru man, and the Kru people live on the coast in Liberia. So he grew up eating a lot of fish. But it was not a difficult transition for him to get into vegetarian living, and that's how I was primarily raised. So enough about that. I'm going to just give you a little drill on how I cut my greens. Now, I'm talking to a congregation in the South, so you all probably don't need this, but in case somebody else is tuned in, let me give you a quick tutorial. One of the things I love about cutting greens this way, oh, and by the way, take a look at our delicious, yummy, vibrant greens. This dish that I'm going to fix is a mixture of collard and kale. I like to tell people that in Kenya, kale is known as sukuma wiki. Sukuma wiki means push the week. And typically, oftentimes in countries and in areas where people tend to struggle financially, there are things that they will rely on to get them through. And that is what push the week means. Sukuma wiki is something that people eat there. It was food that was kind of like hard time food, but it's become a delicacy and it's a comfort food for the continent. So that is why I'm going to use kale. And I'm using collards as a nod to African American South. So let me show you what I do. When I take my collard greens, I never cut out my stalks because I believe if you cut it thin enough, you don't have to worry about that. So I'm going to show you what I do. I take my collards and I roll them tightly. I roll them tightly, and then I just, in a rocking motion, I cut them in thin ribbons. Now you may not go as fast as I'm going, and that's fine. Just always make sure that you have your fingers tucked so you don't accidentally cut yourself. And I'm slowing down here. So that's our first set. And after I do that, then I cut across the other way. So I've done them cylindrically and then I cut into those cylinders, okay? And what you get here is, see how it's just the perfect size. I'm gonna put that into my bowl. I'm gonna cut a little more because you can never have too many greens. And again, we're gonna roll them very tightly. Cut these ribbons. Okay. And again, once we've done that, I'm going to cut across so we have bite-sized pieces. That looks great and it smells great. All right, so we've got enough of our collards now. Now we're gonna do the kale. I'm using lacinato kale. It's also known as dinosaur kale. I don't think that there is any kind of nutritional difference, but I like to use this because it's easier to cut along with the collard greens. Okay, so I'm gonna stack these and roll these tightly again. You can see what I'm doing, and then I'm gonna cut these into thin ribbons. Careful to keep my fingers out of the way. All right, and then cut this like here again. Now, let me tell you about palm oil. Palm oil is something that is uniquely a part of West African culture. I grew up eating palm oil, and it's so funny because palm oil is one of those things that it has a very unique taste. It has a smokiness about it. You will not forget the taste once you've tasted it, and it's clearly a nod to the continent. When you have it, it takes your dish to another place. Now, palm oil is one of those things that you need to use. You don't need to overdo it with palm oil because it is fat. It's good fat. It's heart-healthy fat, but it is something that you definitely need to be careful with, not too much of it. So as I'm using it, I'm really just using it as, it is going to be a vehicle of fat to fry my aromatics, but also to give that flavor, that uniquely West African flavor to the greens. So I'm going to turn on my little stove here. And we're going to get started. So this is what our greens look like now. You know and I know that this is not going to cook up much. It's going to really break down. Not as much as, say, spinach would. But what I have done after I cut that up, I just mix them together so that they're like a nice 50-50 mix. of the kale and the collards. Now, when I fix my kale and my collards, when I fix my greens, I don't cook them a long time. And you will see that. For me, I tend to like texture. And I think that greens are much more flavorful when they're not cooked for a very long time. So what we're really doing is we are cooking to soften the cellular wall of the greens so that it becomes bioavailable. So the nutrients, your body can get them. That's the whole purpose of what we're doing. We don't want to overcook them so that the nutrients end up in the water that we oftentimes cast off. I know some people in the South call it pot liquor. I'm not big on pot liquor. I like the greens, so I like to cook my greens this way so that all my nutrients are still intact in the greens, and you'll see what I'm saying. But when you cook greens like this, there's no need for turkey neck. There's no need for salt beef. Now let me tell you, I grew up, my mother was from the West Indies. I know about salt beef. I know that it takes food to another level, but there is a way to have delicious greens without using animal protein. And what we're doing in using onions and fresh thyme and tomato and bell peppers and celery and mushrooms and ginger and garlic and palm oil and coconut milk, you are literally building layers of flavor. So much so that we're just going to use a little bit of salt. We're not even going to use a lot of salt. So the thing I like to tell people is that cooking like this isn't difficult. You just have to be intentional. You just have to really think about what you're doing. And one of the things that's happened to us as a culture is we've gotten caught up in not thinking about what we're eating. We just grab something, convenience has taken hold. And so in cooking meals like this, we are honoring our temple that has been given to us by the Creator, and we are being vigilant about what we are putting into our temples. And that's something that I encourage others to do, as I encourage myself as well, because this has been a back and forth issue with me. Okay, so we've warmed up, and let me grab a spoon. You know, I've seen some of the sessions that you all do for cooking, and I know that this is a different take on it, but this is how I do it, and I hope you all enjoy it, and I hope that you will follow and try this recipe sometime during the holidays. I'm pretty sure you all are going to be watching this after Thanksgiving, but try this out for Christmas. All right, now you see that beautiful color? That beautiful color, that's palm oil. You can buy palm oil at Whole Foods. You can get it at Sprouts. I get mine at the local African store, but you all can find some bougie palm oil at Sprouts, Whole Foods, and things like that. I get bougie sometimes, but not when it comes to my palm oil. Okay, so our palm oil has melted, and to that, I'm going to use fresh thyme. I keep it right on the, I just throw it in there. You know why I throw it in there like that? It's faster, and I can just pick it out. It drives my husband crazy, but that's what I do. Put that in there. Then I'm going to put my onions in there that I have sliced up thinly. One of the things that I always encourage people to do when they are cooking is to make sure you cut things evenly. And the reason I say that is not only because it makes a beautiful dish in the end, but also because everything will cook evenly. If you have a big piece of bell pepper and a small piece of bell pepper, the small piece of bell pepper will dissolve by the time you've cooked the large piece of bell pepper. So be very intentional when you cut your things so that everything is close. It doesn't have to be perfect, obviously, but you want to have your pieces of onions and things like that. You want to have some uniformity. All right, so this is going to kick in just a minute. I was initially supposed to do this with you all live. I was going to come and I was going to do a series of cooking classes live at Riverside Chapel. And then COVID came in and said, I'm not going to let you be great, Cynthia. So unfortunately, I'm not there with you in person, but I'm so thankful that I'm able to do it like this. All right, I'm hearing it start to sizzle. Okay, so our onions are cooking. To this, I'm going to add my garlic. You always want to be careful when you add your garlic because nobody likes the flavor of burnt garlic. It'll ruin an entire dish. And then I'm also going to put my ginger in here. I know how many of you use ginger in your greens, but I do, and I promise you, it adds a delicious flavor to it. Now, if you don't want to use palm oil, you don't have to. You can use any kind of oil that kind of withstands high heat. You can use avocado oil, that's great because it's very heart healthy. You can use grapeseed oil, that's another great one. You can use coconut oil if you like. All right, this is smelling and looking great. All right, so now I'm going to add my tomato. I wish you all could smell this. It smells so yum. And the great thing about this dish is it really is not a lot of work. Most of your work is the preparation in the beginning, and then it goes very quickly. I have shared this, I believe, a few minutes ago. I love texture, so I don't like cooking things until they're like mushy. So these tomatoes, I just really want to just get some heat under them to dry them out just a little bit. And now I'm putting in my bell pepper. The other thing about this dish that is so neat is, I know you've probably heard the term eat the rainbow. This is definitely an eat the rainbow dish. If you can already see, these colors are just lovely. The palm oil has this beautiful, almost turmeric colored glow to it, and to that we've added tomatoes and we've got our bell peppers. Now I'm going to add some celery because I love a little bit of crunch. And celery also has the added benefit of having a bit of saltiness to it. So oftentimes you can use celery, if you want to cut back on your salt intake, you can use celery in its stead. Not celery salt, because celery salt is literally celery and salt. I'm not saying that. Use celery. Now you may say, I don't know about that. But let me tell you, one of the things that I always say is that you can retrain your palate. If you're used to things that are very, very salty or very sweet, you can retrain your palate so that you're able to really appreciate the nuances and flavors that Mother Nature, God, has given us. All right, now I'm putting in my mushrooms. Now I have some chanterelles that I was going to use, but I didn't know if everybody would have access to that as easily, so I decided to just use regular button mushrooms. And those are in there. So there's all of this in here, and we have not even added our greens as yet. But never fear, they will soon join the pot. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put my greens on top of this mixture. These beautiful shredded greens, our kale and our collards. All gonna go on top of here. And what I'm gonna do, I'm just gonna add a touch, maybe just shy of a quarter cup of water, because what I want to happen is I want the steam to get through this and cook it. So it's gonna speed up our process. So I put that there, and I'm gonna cover it up just for a little bit, and you will see what happens. So this negates the use of a lot of oil. It negates a lot of time. This dish from start to finish typically is about 15-20 minutes. So the only thing we have left to add here is our coconut milk and some salt. Now, I love the lusciousness of coconut milk. I think coconut milk makes the world go round, honestly. But you may not like it. So you may want to use here some kind of vegan half and half, something kind of creamy. What this really is doing, it's kind of like the African diaspora inspired like creamed kale or creamed collards or creamed spinach or something like that. That's what we're working towards. I love coconut because I just think that it just reminds, it's like my ratatouille moment. It just takes me back to such fond memories. And there is a satiating part of the coconut because of the fat that's in it. So I'm using full fat coconut milk. You don't have to use full fat coconut milk. You can use low fat coconut milk. That's fine. All right. So this is, all right, so you should be able to see, can you see the steam coming off of this? All right, watch this. This dish is almost done. This smells so good. It's so colorful, beautiful. It's good for you. And it's delicious. You see that? You see how it's just kind of wilted. That's what we want. We want our greens to wilt. We want that cell wall to be broken down just enough so that it's bioavailable, meaning that the nutrients are readily available to your body and your body will get what it needs. These look so good. I'm almost tempted not to add the coconut milk, but the greedy person in me is insisting that I add the coconut milk. Ah, this looks beautiful. Can you all see this? Let me see if I can pick up the pot so you can see what we've got going on in here. Let's see. Take a look at that. Is that lovely? It is a lovely pot of greens. All right. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to add a little coconut milk. Something I forgot to share with you earlier. The Luo of Kenya are the ones that add coconut milk. And guess who is Luo? No, not me, Barack Obama. Barack Obama is part of the Luo tribe, and they use coconut milk when they fix their greens. And so I'm taking this is probably about 3/4 cup of whole fat coconut milk, and I'm putting that in there. We don't want to drown it. You just want to give some of that flavor to it. All right. And now This is when I add my salt. So I have this salt that I love. It's a mushroom salt. And I'm just gonna sprinkle over the top. The other great part about seasoning at the end is things have pretty much contracted. Your greens have cooked down. When you look at that big pile initially, you'll think that there's way more, and you have a tendency to over salt. So that's why I like to salt at the end. So I pretty much probably put like 2 teaspoons of salt in here. And I'm just gonna, woo, it smells good. And I am turning off the fire. These greens are done. Let me just grab a fork. And I'm gonna see if this is everything that I've dreamed of and hoped for. Let's see. I know it's hot, so I might with you guys. Delicious. And it has a little bit of texture of it, so there's still a little bit of crunch. Now, if you're somebody who doesn't like crunch, let it steam a little longer. What you would do, just cover it, turn off the heat, let it do its thing. But this is delicious. This is fiber, this is calcium, this is antioxidants, this is all the good stuff that we need to fuel our temples. So, thank you for joining me. This is African diaspora inspired collard greens and kale. Yummy. Try it. Let me know what you think. So here's a recap of our ingredients for our African diaspora inspired kale and collards. 2 bunches of collards, thinly sliced. 1 bunch of lacinato kale, thinly sliced. We've got about 1/2 of an onion, thinly sliced. We've got 1 stalk of celery, thinly sliced. 1/4 cup of sliced bell peppers. I used red and yellow. You can use green if you would like. I used a tablespoon of crushed ginger, 2 cloves of garlic, 1 sprig of thyme, 1/2 to 3/4 cup of coconut milk. We used a tablespoon of palm oil to saute our veggies, and at the end, just a sprinkle of salt to bring it all together. Let me see, did I forget anything? Oh, 1/4 cup of sliced mushrooms. Now, of course, these ingredients, you can mix them as you want, take out what you don't want to, add what you would like. But the idea is to eat the rainbow and incorporate all these lovely, yummy veggies into your pot of greens. Don't cook it too long. That's not necessary. We want to maintain all of the nutrients that Mother Nature has provided. Bye.